Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair aboard the Earth's Pride, watching the stars drift past through the main viewing screen. The ship was on a routine patrol mission near the outer edge of human space, mapping new star systems and looking for planets that might be good for future colonies. It was quiet work, the kind that let a person think about home and family back on Earth. Lieutenant Amy Carter looked up from her science station with a confused expression on her face. She had been monitoring the long-range sensors when something unusual appeared on her screens. "Captain, I'm picking up some strange signals about 3 light-years from our position," she said, adjusting the controls to get a clearer reading. Jake turned his chair toward her station. "What kind of signals, Amy?" "They look like distress calls, but they're not in any language our computers can understand," Amy replied, frowning at the data streaming across her monitor. "The energy patterns are unlike anything I've seen before. Whatever is sending these signals, it's definitely not human." The bridge crew exchanged glances. First contact with alien species was still rare. Even though humans had been exploring space for over a century, most of the time they found empty planets or dead civilizations. Finding living aliens was something that happened maybe once or twice in a person's lifetime. "How far away are they?" Jake asked, already knowing he would investigate no matter what the answer was. "About 18 hours at maximum speed," Amy said, checking her calculations twice to be sure. Jake nodded and turned to his navigation officer. "Set course for those signals, Lieutenant Parker." Maximum speed. The Earth's Pride changed direction smoothly, its powerful engines pushing the ship toward the source of the mysterious distress calls. As they got closer over the next several hours, the signals became stronger and clearer. Amy worked continuously to understand what they were hearing. "Captain, I think I'm starting to decode some of this," Amy said excitedly as they entered the final hour of their journey. "The mathematical portions are becoming clear. These beings are in serious trouble. Their sun is dying, and they're trying to evacuate their entire population." When they finally arrived at the location, what they saw took everyone's breath away. Massive ships filled the space around a red giant star that was clearly in its final stages of life. The ships were unlike anything humans had ever built. They looked like they were made of crystal and light, glowing with soft blue and purple colors that pulsed like a heartbeat. "My God," whispered Commander Lisa Hayes, Jake's second in command. "How many ships are there?" Amy was already running scans. "I count 47 large vessels, Captain. Each one is approximately 5 kilometers long. Based on the energy readings, I estimate they're carrying about 50,000 life forms total." Jake stared at the refugee fleet in amazement. These were clearly the ships of an advanced civilization, far more advanced than humanity. The craftsmanship was beautiful, but he could see damage on many of the vessels. Scorch marks and hull breaches showed that their evacuation had not been easy. "Are they responding to our presence?" Jake asked. "Yes, sir," said Lieutenant Parker from the communication station. "I'm receiving what appears to be a greeting. The computer is starting to translate their language now." A few minutes later, a voice filled the bridge. It sounded like music mixed with the ringing of crystal bells. "Unknown vessel, we are the Kelhari people. We thank you for approaching us. We are refugees from the dying world of Kelthera Prime. Our sun has begun its final collapse and we have nowhere to go." Jake felt his heart sink. These people had lost their entire world. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human vessel Earth's Pride. We received your distress signals and came to help." "What do you need?" There was a pause before the voice replied. "We are grateful for your concern, Captain Morrison. We have temporary life support for perhaps 6 more days, but our young are beginning to weaken. We need to find a place where our people can live safely. We had hoped to reach the worlds of the Galactic Consortium, where we have been members for 3,000 years. Amy looked up from her station with concern. "Captain, their life signs are definitely weakening. Whatever these beings are made of, they need specific environmental conditions to survive. Their ships are doing their best, but it's clearly a temporary solution." Jake made his decision quickly. "Tell them we'll escort them to Consortium space. We know the way to several major worlds where they should be able to find help." The relief in the alien voice was clear. "You honor us with your assistance, Captain Morrison. We will follow your ship." As the Earth's Pride took position ahead of the massive refugee fleet, Jake felt confident that this would be a simple matter. The Galactic Consortium was made up of dozens of advanced civilizations. Surely they would help fellow beings in such desperate need. especially people who had been their allies for thousands of years. Lieutenant Amy Carter continued monitoring the Kalahari ships as they traveled. She noticed that their energy patterns were becoming more unstable with each passing hour. Whatever was keeping these people alive was clearly failing, and failing fast. "How long until we reach the first consortium world?" Jake asked. "About 30 hours to reach Virex Prime," Parker replied. Jake nodded, but Amy's worried expression made him feel less confident. Time was running out for the Kalahari, and they were still a long way from help. He just hoped the consortium would act quickly once they arrived. As the mixed fleet of human and alien ships moved through space toward what they all hoped would be safety, none of them knew that they were about to discover something terrible about the galaxy. They thought they understood. The approach to Virex Prime should have been a moment of relief for everyone aboard the refugee fleet. The planet was beautiful, covered in gleaming cities that stretched across entire continents. Massive space stations orbited the world, showing the wealth and power of the Virex Empire. Jake had expected to see rescue ships coming out to meet them. Instead, a single military vessel approached the Earth's pride. Its captain, a tall reptilian being with cold yellow eyes, appeared on the main screen. "Human vessel, you are entering restricted space with unauthorized refugees. You must turn back immediately." Jake couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Captain Vrexka, these are Kalahari refugees. Their homeworld was destroyed. They need immediate assistance and sanctuary." The Virex captain's expression didn't change. "The Kalahari situation is unfortunate, but not our responsibility. Our worlds operate at optimal population levels. Adding refugees would create imbalance in our society. You have 1 hour to leave our space, but they're dying," Amy said, stepping forward. "Their life support systems are failing. Some of them won't survive another day without proper facilities." "That is regrettable," Vrexka replied without emotion. "But preservation of our social order takes precedence." 1 hour, human. Do not test our patience." The screen went dark, leaving the bridge of the Earth's pride in stunned silence. Jake felt sick to his stomach. How could an advanced civilization simply turn away people who desperately needed help? Commander Lisa Hayes spoke first. "Sir, what do we do now?" Jake looked at the Kalahari fleet on his screens. Their ships were dimming noticeably now, and Amy's sensors showed that their energy patterns were becoming more unstable by the hour. "We go to the next system. The Zephyrian Alliance has always been more reasonable than the Virex." The journey to Zephyrian space took another 18 hours. During that time, the first Kalahari died. Amy detected the moment it happened. A sudden spike in energy from one of their ships, followed by a wave of grief that seemed to pass through the entire fleet. Dr. Ben Foster, the ship's psychologist, watched the readings with growing alarm. "Captain, their emotional patterns are unlike anything I've seen," Ben said quietly. "They seem to be connected to each other somehow. When one dies, they all feel it. This is going to get worse fast if we don't find them help soon." The Zephyrian worlds were known for their beauty and culture. Their people were artists and philosophers who had once created some of the galaxy's greatest works of art. Jake was sure they would understand the value of preserving life and culture. He was wrong. The Zephyrian official who met them was polite but firm. "Captain Morrison, we deeply sympathize with the Kalahari tragedy. However, our current population commitments prevent us from accepting additional residents. Perhaps the Ethereal Collective would be better suited to help." "The Zephyrians once asked the Kalahari for help during their Dark Age," Amy said, reading from the historical records. "The Kalahari shared their energy technology freely and helped the Zephyrians rebuild their civilization." The official's expression showed brief embarrassment, but his answer remained the same. "Historical debts cannot override current practical limitations. We simply do not have the resources," Jake wanted to argue, but more Kalahari were dying. Every hour they spent debating was another hour closer to complete disaster for the refugee fleet. "Where can we take them?" he asked desperately. "Perhaps try the Meridian Republic or the Stellar Union," the official suggested, "though I understand they are also experiencing resource constraints at present." The pattern repeated itself again and again. World after world, system after system, the Kalahari were turned away. The Meridian Republic claimed their aquatic worlds were unsuitable for energy-based beings. The Stellar Union said their security concerns prevented them from accepting refugees. The Trade Federation worried about economic disruption. Each rejection hit the Kalahari harder than the last. Their prime resonance, the leader of their species, was beginning to fade visibly. The being that had once glowed with bright purple light was now barely visible, its energy form flickering like a candle in the wind. Amy spent every moment trying to help, working with the Kelhari to understand their needs better. She discovered that their species was far older than humanity had imagined. They had been exploring space when humans were still living in caves. They had helped dozens of younger species develop technology and join the galactic community. Now in their darkest hour, all those species they had helped were turning them away. "It doesn't make sense," Amy said to Jake during a brief rest period. "These are advanced civilizations. They have the technology and resources to help. Why won't they?" Dr. Ben Foster had been studying the psychological profiles of the various species they had encountered. "I think they're afraid," he said finally. "They've all built perfect societies with perfect balance. They're terrified that accepting refugees might disrupt that perfection. The worst moment came when they reached the hegemony of worlds, the most powerful alliance in the galaxy. Jake had hoped that their sheer size and wealth would make them willing to help. Instead, they found a massive fleet of warships waiting for them. Admiral Korath 7, the hegemony's military commander, was direct and brutal in his message. "The refugee situation ends here, human. We will not allow these displaced beings to become a burden on civilized space. You will escort them to the galactic rim and leave them there. You can't just abandon them in empty space," Lisa said, her voice shaking with anger. "We can and we will," Korath 7 replied. "The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. These Kelhari are already dead. They simply haven't accepted it yet. Do not force us to make their deaths more unpleasant than necessary." Jake felt rage building inside him, but he also felt helpless. The Earth's pride was one small ship against an entire fleet. If he tried to fight, both humans and Kelhari would die. The hegemony fleet escorted them to the very edge of explored space, then left them there with a final warning. "If you attempt to return to civilized space with these refugees, you will be destroyed. This is your only warning." As the hegemony ships disappeared, Jake found himself staring at empty space stretching in all directions. Behind them lay the civilized galaxy that had rejected the Kelhari. Ahead lay nothing but darkness and death. The Kelhari were dying faster now. Their ships were failing one by one, and their population was dropping by hundreds each day. The prime resonance could barely communicate anymore, its voice weak and fading. Jake's communications officer suddenly looked up with surprise. "Captain, I'm receiving a message from Earth Command. They're ordering us to return home immediately." Jake stared at the message for a long moment. Following orders would mean abandoning the Kelhari to die alone in the void. But disobeying would mean ending his career and possibly facing court-martial. He looked at Amy, who was still working desperately to help the aliens. He looked at Lisa, whose face showed the same anger and determination he felt. He looked at the Kelhari ships growing dimmer by the hour. "Set course for Earth," Jake said finally. "Sir?" Parker asked, confused. Jake smiled grimly. "If the galaxy won't help these people, maybe it's time to see what humanity can do." The message Jake sent to Earth Command was simple and direct. Escorting 50,000 Kelhari refugees to Earth. Their species faces extinction. Request immediate humanitarian assistance. He knew that message would either save the Kelhari or end his career, but he no longer cared about his career. The response from Earth came faster than he had expected. President Mary Johnson herself appeared on the communication screen, her face serious but determined. "Captain Morrison, Earth Command has briefed me on the situation. You are authorized to bring the Kelhari refugees directly to Earth. We are declaring our world a sanctuary planet effective immediately." Jake felt relief flood through him, but the president wasn't finished speaking. "Dr. Kevin Roberts from our xenobiology program is already working with teams around the world to prepare facilities for our new guests. We don't know much about their needs yet, but we're going to learn fast. Bring them home, Captain." Amy looked up from her station with tears in her eyes. "Captain, the Kelhari are detecting our change in course. The prime resonance is asking what's happening." Jake opened a channel to the Kelhari fleet. "Prime resonance, we are taking you to our homeworld. My people want to help you." There was a long pause before the weak voice of the Kelhari leader replied. "Your people would accept us after we have been rejected by all others?" "Yes," Jake said simply. "That's what good people do." The journey to Earth took 4 days, and during that time something remarkable began happening. News of the Kalahari refugees spread across Earth faster than any government announcement had ever traveled. Social media exploded with discussions about the crystal people who needed help. Children drew pictures of what they thought aliens might look like. Families volunteered to host refugees even though no one knew if that was possible. Susan Davis, Earth's most popular news anchor, dedicated her entire program to the story each night. Tonight, as our planet prepares to welcome refugees from across the galaxy, we ask ourselves, what does it mean to be human? Perhaps it means being the species that opens its doors when others close theirs. Dr. Kevin Roberts worked around the clock with Amy, who transmitted everything she had learned about Kalahari physiology back to Earth. Teams of scientists, engineers, and volunteers worked together to convert orbital stations and build new facilities that might support energy-based life forms. Engineer Tony Martinez led the largest construction project in human history. In just 4 days, his teams converted 3 orbital stations into what they hoped would be suitable habitats for the Kalahari. They used every piece of knowledge Amy had gathered about the aliens' energy requirements. When the refugee fleet finally approached Earth's solar system, they were met by an incredible sight. Hundreds of human ships had come out to escort them home. Not military vessels, but civilian ships, cargo haulers, passenger liners, and private yachts. Every human ship in the system had volunteered to help guide the Kalahari to safety. Amy monitored the Kalahari energy patterns as they approached Earth and made an amazing discovery. Captain, you need to see this. The Kalahari energy signatures are stabilizing as we get closer to Earth. Something about our planet's magnetic field is actually helping them. Dr. Rachel Torres, a quantum physicist who had joined the refugee assistance team, appeared on screen from Earth. Captain, we think we know why. Earth's magnetic field creates unique energy patterns that seem to resonate with Kalahari biology. It's like our planet was designed to support their kind of life. The first Kalahari ships landed at specially prepared facilities in Antarctica, where the magnetic conditions were strongest. Dr. Torres had been right. The aliens not only survived in Earth's environment, they began to thrive in ways they hadn't experienced in months. The prime resonance was among the first to emerge from the ships, its energy form stabilizing and growing brighter as it interacted with Earth's magnetic field. For the first time since Jake had met them, the Kalahari leader's voice was strong and clear. Captain Morrison, your world is a miracle. We can feel its life energy supporting us in ways we had not dared to hope for. How can we ever repay this kindness? Jake smiled as he watched Kalahari energy forms dancing through the specially designed chambers, growing stronger and brighter with each passing hour. Just help us learn about each other. That's payment enough. The integration began immediately. Human scientists worked alongside Kalahari energy manipulators to understand how their respective biologies functioned. Dr. Torres made breakthrough discoveries about quantum energy fields. Amy found that human brain patterns actually resonated sympathetically with Kalahari thought processes, making communication easier than anyone had imagined. Within weeks, the first integrated colonies were being planned. The site chosen was in the Australian outback, where the magnetic conditions were ideal, and there was plenty of space for both human and Kalahari settlements. They called it New Resonance. The construction of New Resonance became a global project. Volunteers came from every nation on Earth to help build the first city, designed for 2 completely different forms of life. Human architects worked with Kalahari energy shapers to create buildings that could house both solid matter and pure energy. The results amazed everyone. Human creativity combined with Kalahari technology produced innovations neither species had imagined possible, buildings that could shift their structure based on need, energy systems that were perfectly clean and efficient, art forms that combined human visual imagination with Kalahari energy manipulation. Tony Martinez, who had become the chief engineer for the integration project, stood in the center of New Resonance 6 months after the Kalahari arrival. Around him, human children played with young Kalahari energy patterns, creating games that combined physical movement with energy manipulation. Adults from both species worked together on projects that would have been impossible for either group alone. You know what the strangest part is? Tony said to Amy as they watched the daily life of the integrated city. It all feels so natural. Like this is how it was always supposed to be. Amy nodded, watching a human artist collaborate with a Kalahari energy shaper to create a sculpture that existed in both physical and energy space simultaneously. Maybe it is. Maybe this is what the galaxy was supposed to look like before everyone got so focused on perfection and order. But their success came with a price. News of Earth's acceptance of the Kelhari refugees had spread throughout the galaxy, and the reaction from the Galactic Consortium was swift and harsh. Trade embargoes were imposed on Earth immediately. Human ships were banned from Consortium space. Earth was officially declared a rogue world that threatened galactic stability. Admiral Frank Cooper, commander of Earth's small space navy, found himself preparing for the possibility of military action. Intelligence reports suggested that Consortium forces were gathering at the edge of human space, possibly preparing for a blockade or worse. The crisis deepened when other refugee species began arriving at Earth. The aquatic Meridians came first, fleeing climate disasters that had destroyed their ocean worlds. Then came the insectoid Kitex, escaping a plague that had turned their hive minds against each other. Each group had been rejected by the same civilizations that now condemned Earth for accepting them. President Johnson called an emergency session of Earth's government. "We have a choice to make," she told the assembled leaders. "We can surrender our new friends to save ourselves, or we can stand by our principles and face whatever comes next." The vote was unanimous. Earth would continue to serve as a sanctuary world, no matter what the cost. As Admiral Cooper prepared Earth's defenses and more refugee ships appeared in human space, the galaxy watched to see what would happen when the newest species in space stood up to the oldest and most powerful civilizations. What they were about to discover would change everything. 1 year after the first Kelhari refugees arrived on Earth, the planet had transformed in ways no one could have predicted. New residents had grown from a small experimental colony into a thriving city of over 100,000 residents, both human and alien. The success of the integration had exceeded everyone's wildest hopes. Amy Carter, now Director of Interspecies Relations, stood in the observation deck of the New Geneva station orbiting Earth. Through the massive windows, she could see ships from a dozen different refugee species coming and going. Kelhari energy vessels glowed alongside human cargo ships, while Meridian bioships that looked like giant sea creatures swam through space using their own propulsion systems. The partnership between humans and their refugee guests had created technological advances that amazed both sides. Kelhari energy manipulation techniques had allowed humans to develop completely clean power sources that could run entire cities without any environmental impact. In return, human creativity and adaptability had helped the Kelhari develop new art forms and ways of thinking they had never imagined. Dr. Rachel Torres had become Earth's leading expert on multi-species technology integration. Her laboratory in New Resonance was a wonder of combined engineering, where solid matter and pure energy worked together in ways that seemed almost magical. The Kelhari energy matrix can stabilize quantum fluctuations in ways we never thought possible, she explained to a group of visiting scientists. Combined with human computer systems, we're creating processing power that exceeds anything either species could build alone. The Meridians had brought their own gifts to Earth. Their mastery of biological systems and water-based technology had revolutionized human agriculture and medicine. Diseases that had plagued humanity for centuries were being cured using Meridian bioengineering techniques. Ocean restoration projects using Meridian knowledge were cleaning Earth's polluted waters faster than anyone had believed possible. The Chitex, with their complex hive mind intelligence, had contributed strategic thinking and coordination abilities that helped organize the growing refugee communities. What might have been chaos became smooth cooperation, thanks to Chitex's organizational skills combined with human flexibility. But the success on Earth came with growing tension from the rest of the galaxy. The Galactic Consortium had not been idle during Earth's year of integration. Trade sanctions had been just the beginning. Admiral Frank Cooper studied the intelligence reports in his office at Earth Defense Headquarters. The news was not good. They're not just gathering ships anymore, he told President Johnson during their weekly security briefing. Consortium forces are actively patrolling the borders of human space. Any ship trying to reach Earth is being turned away or destroyed. The blockade was having serious effects. Earth's economy, which had always depended on trade with other worlds, was beginning to suffer. More importantly, refugee ships that were trying to reach Earth's sanctuary were being intercepted by Consortium forces. Many desperate beings were dying in space because they couldn't reach safety. Diplomat Helen Baker had been working tirelessly to negotiate with consortium representatives, but their position remained inflexible. Earth must surrender all refugee populations and cease its sanctuary activities, the consortium ambassador had stated coldly. Continued defiance will result in complete isolation from galactic civilization. The ultimatum had been clear and brutal. Earth had 30 days to comply or face military action. That deadline was now only 1 week away. In New Resonance, the refugee communities were well aware of the growing crisis. The Prime Resonance called a meeting of all refugee leaders to discuss the situation. The great chamber where they met was a marvel of combined architecture, with energy patterns dancing through crystalline structures, while water flowed in impossible spirals and organic bioshapes grew and changed continuously. The humans have risked everything to help us, the Prime Resonance said, its voice carrying harmonics that all the different species could understand. Now they face destruction because of their kindness. We cannot allow this to happen. Meridian Wave Speaker, the leader of the aquatic refugees, pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that expressed determination. Our defensive technologies are at their disposal. We will not abandon those who saved us. Chitex Hive Prime, speaking for the Insectoid Collective, buzzed with complex harmonics. Our strategic coordination capabilities are already integrating with human defense systems. We think as one now. The refugee species had made their decision. They would not flee again. They would stand with humanity and defend their new home. Captain Jake Morrison, now Admiral of Earth's expanded defense fleet, coordinated the preparation with representatives from all the refugee species. The combined fleet was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships worked alongside vessels of pure energy, bioships that grew their own weapons, and geometric craft that could shift their structure based on tactical needs. It's not about the weapons, Jake explained to his mixed crew of humans, Kelhari, Meridians, and Chitex. It's about what we're fighting for. The consortium has forgotten that technology should serve life, not the other way around. We're going to remind them. But even as Earth prepared for war, something unexpected was happening throughout consortium space. Intelligence reports brought back by sympathetic traders spoke of growing unrest on dozens of worlds. Young members of various species were questioning their government's policies toward refugees. On Zephyrian worlds, art students had begun creating works celebrating human compassion and condemning their own species' callousness. Frex youth were organizing protests demanding their government explain why they had turned away dying refugees. Even among the militaristic hegemony, younger generations were asking difficult questions about their society's values. The cracks in consortium unity were beginning to show. Several smaller worlds had already declared their independence rather than participate in the planned military action against Earth. The Meridian Republic had split entirely when half their worlds chose to join Earth's refugee coalition instead of following consortium orders. Amy received reports from across the galaxy through a network of sympathetic contacts. It's spreading faster than we expected, she told Jake during a strategy meeting. The idea that compassion is strength instead of weakness is taking hold everywhere. Dr. Ben Foster had been studying the psychological profiles of the various consortium species. They've spent so long building perfect societies that they forgot what made their societies worth building in the first place, he observed. When they see what we've accomplished here with the refugees, it reminds them of what they've lost. The most dramatic change came from an unexpected source. The Ethereal Collective, masters of space and time who had always considered themselves above ordinary concerns, sent a secret message to Earth. Their youngest members had been studying human refugee integration and were amazed by what they discovered. Your species has achieved something we thought impossible, the message stated. You have created harmony between completely different forms of life without forcing anyone to abandon their nature. This is what we once called wisdom, before we became obsessed with our own perfection. As the deadline approached, Jake found himself commanding a fleet that represented something entirely new in galactic history. Dozens of species working together not because they were forced to, but because they chose to. Not because they were conquered, but because they were welcomed. The consortium fleet that appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system was massive and intimidating. Hundreds of warships from the galaxy's most powerful civilizations arranged themselves in perfect military formation. Their message was simple and direct: surrender the refugees and submit to consortium authority, or be destroyed. Jake looked around the bridge of his flagship, the Earth's Hope, at the mixed crew of beings who had once been strangers and were now family. Amy stood at her science station, still working to find peaceful solutions even as war approached. The prime resonance flickered with determination as it coordinated energy-based defenses. Meridian biotechnicians prepared their living weapons while Kitex, strategists, calculated optimal formations. Send our reply, Jake ordered. The message that went out to the consortium fleet was short but clear. This is Admiral Jake Morrison of the Earth Sanctuary Fleet. We reject your ultimatum. If you want to destroy beings whose only crime was showing compassion to the desperate, you'll have to go through all of us. The galaxy held its breath as two very different ideas of civilization prepared to clash among the stars. The two fleets faced each other in the space between Earth and Mars, representing two completely different ideas about what civilization should be. The consortium fleet was massive and perfectly organized, their ships arranged in precise military formations that had conquered dozens of worlds. The Earth Sanctuary Fleet was smaller but unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, with vessels from multiple species working together in formations that seemed to dance rather than march. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Earth's Hope, watching the enemy fleet through the main viewer. His ship was surrounded by an incredible variety of allies. Kelhari energy vessels glowed like stars, their light pulsing in rhythm with their crew's emotions. Meridian bioships moved like living creatures, their organic hulls shifting and adapting. Chitex's geometric craft changed their shapes continuously, as their hive minds calculated new strategies. Consortium fleet is powering weapons, reported Lieutenant Amy Carter from her position at the tactical station. She had insisted on staying with Jake despite offers to coordinate refugee evacuations from safety. They're really going to do this. The communication channel crackled to life with the voice of Admiral Korath 7 of the Hegemony. Final warning, humans. Surrender the refugees and submit to consortium authority. You have 60 seconds to comply. Jake was about to respond when something unexpected happened. The prime resonance, speaking from its position at the energy coordination station, sent out a pulse that reached not just the Earth fleet, but every ship in the system and beyond. People of the galaxy. The Kelhari leader's voice rang out across all communication channels, carried by quantum resonance that could reach every world in consortium space. We wish to share with you a memory. The memory of our arrival at a world called Earth. What followed was unlike anything in galactic history. The prime resonance transmitted not words but actual memories and emotions. Every being in the galaxy with the ability to receive quantum communications experienced the moment when dying. Kelhari refugees first saw human ships coming to help. They felt the joy and wonder of beings who had been rejected by everyone, suddenly finding a species that welcomed them without question. The transmission showed the construction of new resonance, where children of different species played together while their parents worked side by side. It showed Meridian bioengineers healing human diseases, while human doctors learned to care for aquatic beings. It showed Chitech strategists coordinating with human planners to create cities that worked for everyone. But most powerfully, it showed the moment when each refugee species had first been welcomed by humans. The moment when beings who had given up hope discovered that there were still people in the galaxy who believed that helping strangers was more important than protecting themselves. Jake watched his tactical displays in amazement as the transmission spread throughout consortium space. On world after world, beings who had never questioned their government's refugee policies suddenly found themselves experiencing what it felt like to be desperate and alone, and what it felt like to be welcomed by strangers. The first break in consortium unity came from an unexpected source. 3 Vrex battle cruisers suddenly changed course, moving away from the main fleet toward Earth's forces. Their captain appeared on the communication screen, his reptilian features showing emotions Jake had never seen from his species before. Admiral Morrison, this is Captain Vrextal. My crew has voted to join your coalition. We can no longer serve a government that turns away the desperate. Within minutes, more ships began breaking away from the consortium fleet. Young Zephyrian crews abandoned their positions to join the sanctuary forces. Meridian Republic ships that had been forced to serve the consortium switched sides entirely. Even some hegemony vessels, their crews influenced by the prime resonance's transmission, began powering down their weapons. Admiral Korath Seven's voice cut through the chaos with rage and desperation. All units ignore the enemy propaganda and maintain formation. We will restore order to this galaxy, but his fleet was dissolving around him. The transmission had reached every world in consortium space, and the response was immediate and overwhelming. On planet after planet, younger generations who had never understood their government's callous policies began demanding answers. Why had they turned away the dying Kelhari? Why had they rejected the desperate Meridians? Why had they chosen cruelty over compassion? Amy monitored communications from across the galaxy as reports flooded in. Jake, you need to hear this. The Vrex Empire is experiencing massive civil unrest. The Zephyrian Alliance government has been overthrown by peaceful revolution. Half the hegemony worlds have declared independence. Dr. Rachel Torres, coordinating from New Resonance, added her own report. The quantum resonance cascade is still spreading. Every species with quantum communication ability is receiving the transmission. The entire galaxy is feeling what the refugees felt. The transformation was happening faster than anyone had imagined possible. The perfect, orderly civilizations of the consortium were discovering that their perfection had been built on a foundation of callousness that their own people could no longer accept. The military confrontation that everyone had expected never happened. Instead of a battle between fleets, the galaxy witnessed something far more powerful. The moment when an entire civilization looked at itself in the mirror and decided to change. Admiral Korath Seven found himself commanding fewer than a dozen ships as his fleet abandoned him. The final moment came when his own officers relieved him of command, choosing to join the growing movement toward what they were calling the human doctrine, the idea that true strength came from helping others rather than protecting yourself. Captain Jake Morrison, who had started this journey as a simple patrol captain, found himself at the center of a galactic revolution. Ships from across the galaxy were arriving at Earth not to fight but to learn. Representatives from hundreds of worlds wanted to understand how humanity had created such successful integration between different species. The signing of the Terra Accords took place on Earth 6 months later. Representatives from over 300 worlds gathered in New Resonance to establish new principles for galactic civilization. The document they created was simple but revolutionary. We, the species of this galaxy, recognize that our highest calling is not the protection of our own perfection, but the extension of compassion to all sentient life. We pledge to judge our civilizations not by their technological achievements, but by how they treat the most vulnerable among us. Amy Carter, now Earth's ambassador to the galactic community, stood before the assembled delegates as they signed the accords. Around her, beings of dozens of different species worked together to translate the document into forms that everyone could understand. Energy patterns for the Kelhari, bioluminescent displays for the Meridians, harmonic vibrations for the Chiteks. The galaxy that emerged from the crisis was utterly transformed. The old consortium, built on the principle of maintaining perfect order, was replaced by the Galactic Alliance, founded on the principle of mutual aid. Refugee assistance programs were established on every member world. Trade flowed freely between species who had once viewed each other with suspicion. Jake Morrison, now Admiral of the Galactic Sanctuary Fleet, looked out from his new flagship at the orbital facilities around Earth. Dozens of species lived and worked together in harmony, their different abilities combining to achieve things none of them could have managed alone. Children of multiple species attended integrated schools where they learned that diversity was strength, not weakness. The transformation hadn't been without challenges. Old prejudices died hard, and there were still those who believed in the superiority of their own species. But the memory of the Prime Resonance's transmission lived on, reminding everyone of what they had almost lost and what they had gained by choosing compassion over fear. Dr. Ben Foster, now head of interspecies psychology, often spoke to groups about the lessons learned during the crisis. We discovered that perfection without compassion isn't perfection at all, he would tell them. It's just elaborate selfishness. True civilization isn't measured by what you can achieve for yourself, but by what you're willing to sacrifice for others. The final scene of this remarkable transformation took place in a classroom in New Resonance, where Amy Carter taught a mixed group of human and alien children about galactic history. When one young student asked why Earth had helped the refugees when no one else would, Amy's answer was simple but profound. Because that's what good neighbors do, and in this galaxy, we're all neighbors. Outside the classroom windows, ships from across the galaxy came and went, carrying beings who had once been strangers and were now family. The galaxy that had once turned refugees away had learned the most important lesson of all, that true strength comes not from what you can achieve alone, but from what you can build together.